Good afternoon, everyone. This is Drea Miller, Director of Alumni Relations here at Mount Mary University. You are joining us for Power Lunch, broadcasted right here from our campus in the Haggerty Library. And I am so ecstatic to once again bring you Sara Reed, with more than 25 years of human resources experience. Sara believes that we create our own reality on and off the job, which I can attest to. She is passionate about helping professionals who feel stuck, exhausted, unfulfilled, to step into the power and truly take charge of the career that they want to create. This is Networking 101, and I think this is really neat because Sara and I actually met at a networking event.
Yes, we did.
I don't even remember how long it was, but it's been a while.
A couple of years, I think.
Yeah. And she and I were strangers sitting next to each other, and quickly learned a lot about each other at this event. And she's here with us today because we had some really great conversations because we were networking. So welcome, Sara. We're so excited to have you back to campus. And I will let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Drea. Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? Can I get a little thumbs up if you can see me? You'll notice the chat is in the bottom left of your screen. If you click that button, you'll be able to open up a window and you can type and say hello, because it's nice to know that you're all out here, so I'm not just talking to a camera. Again, want to thank Mount Mary and the alumni group for bringing me here again today. I'm excited for our second round of this Power Lunch series and looking forward to talking with you all about networking today. So, okay, we're good. We got a screen. All of you see, thank you. So again, thank you to Mount Mary for having me. What I'd love to know is, what's your fear around networking? What's your question around networking? What brought you here today? So if you can share a little message in the chat, I'd love to make this as interactive as possible. So I'll give you a minute to respond. I don't want to have a Bueller moment. For those of you that know Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bueller. All right, I see some people typing. All right, meeting new people, awesome. Any of you out here feel like networking is a little scary, right? That's one thing that comes up for me. So I think that's one thing I want to make sure we talk about today. And I heard Drea say that you wanted to know about meeting new people, having nothing to talk about. So we'll make sure we talk through some of those things today. But a little bit about me. Drea did a great job of introducing me, just so you know who's talking at you here today. I spent many of my years in the HR world. I worked for Robert W. Baird & Company, which is a financial services company headquartered here in Milwaukee, and loved my work. Had a great team of people that I supported, but for me, I got to the point where I was dreading Sunday mornings. I don't know if you can attest to that, if anyone's out there experienced that before. And I was not happy with my husband. I wasn't happy with my daughter. I have a lovely daughter who's now almost 11 and a wonderful supportive husband, but I was real cranky with them on Sundays. And that was all because of my job and not loving what I did anymore. So I decided to make a change, and I launched Moonstone Consulting almost 4 years ago now. And it's been such a pleasure to be able to do what I really loved, because when I was in corporate America, what had happened was I loved the coaching and mentoring part of my job, which was this big, but my job was really this big. And it was all about going from meeting to meeting, and I really wasn't using my gifts, which was really coaching and mentoring. And that's what made me launch the business 4 years ago. And I love being able to do things like this and share what I know with people and help them move and grow forward. And there's it's so fulfilling to be able to see people shift and change in their lives. And I feel really grateful to do that. So let's dig in today. Oops. That's what I have. If you could see this right now, you'd see this massive screen, and I got two screens here. So bear with me as we're mining through this. So let's start with, what is networking? Because I think people have different definitions. So I took the dictionary definition of interacting with other people to exchange information and develop contacts, especially to further your career. And I think that's oftentimes what people think of when it comes to networking. And we're going to talk about different types of networking today, not just as it focuses on the career, because I think there's value in both. I think when I think of networking, yes, this is the dictionary definition, but it's really about sharing a bit of you with the world. right? And that can be for the purpose of your career. It can be for the purpose of building relationships, but it's really about making connection. And we'll dig in again deeper into that. And then we'll talk about some of the how-to as well today, and hopefully give you some good tips to take with you, and then maybe make some decisions on, okay, what can I do to increase my network or go out there and feel more comfortable with it? So the types of networking, right? And I think sometimes people think of networking as like, I got to go to this networking event tonight and there's going to be 100 people and that freaks me out. Anybody ever experienced that there? This is where you use the chat. So feel free to give me a thumbs up that they feel that way, right? So that's where I think people always think of networking. In fact, I work with a lot of clients that are looking to shift in their career, either move upward, move to another role. And oftentimes this is one of the things they hate doing the most because it freaks them out. But know that it's not always just about a group event or going to a luncheon. It could be just one-on-one. It could be through social media. So know that it's not just about that big event where it may freak you out a little bit, especially for those introverts out there, that you might experience that. So know that there's some other ways to network than just that big event. So let's talk about one-on-one networking, right? So one-on-one networking can mean something as simple as going to lunch or coffee or dinner with a friend. It can be via phone, right? I've had people who have connected with other people strictly via phone. They've never met each other in person and built really great relationships that way. I've done that myself. It can also, because we live in this wonderful age of technology like Skype, which we're all on right now, or another platform called Zoom, where you can literally do a video conference with someone. So it doesn't always have to be the traditional large networking session or setting, I should say. So group or event networking. So some options, or what does that look like, could be, I think what people often traditionally think of is that's where you find like Chamber of Commerce meetings or professional associations, right? So if you're an accountant or a nurse, oftentimes you belong to certain associations or groups and they host events. That's another option. Or charity or business events. I know when I was at Baird, I'd often go to a lot of events like that. And they were in a large group of people, and that's where you got a chance to talk. There's also ways of finding events, these bigger events, or even smaller events on websites called like Meetup, or you found this event on Eventbrite, right? Mount Mary used this to broadcast it to everyone. Just for those of you that don't know what Meetup is a platform that is both for professional and personal use, where you can go find people with similar interests, right? So people who like to sew, you can find things on sewing. People who are in business for themselves and they want to network with other people and talk about marketing. It's a great platform to find out what's going on in your area and find and meet new people. And I'm a believer when it comes to networking, sometimes you don't want to go, like, for example, if you're looking for a job, right? So people think of, I need to go to like a more career-focused networking event to reach out to someone. I'm a belief that why don't you go do something you like, right? So you find something on meetup.com or Eventbrite that's all around going to a cool restaurant downtown and you're all going to meet up with people. To me, finding that common interest and that connection is sometimes more effective way to really get to know somebody than by going to a regular traditional Chamber of Commerce meeting. So know that it doesn't have to look like it's in a box. It has to be something more traditional, that there's other ways to get out there and network. Social media networking, we talked a little bit about this, right? LinkedIn has become this huge platform for folks within their career. It's like the career side. It's like what Facebook is for your personal life, for your career, right? So LinkedIn is a great avenue to meet people and connect with other people. And we'll talk more about how you can really cultivate those relationships and not just hit connect and then you never talk to one another again. Facebook, it can be used for that personal networking or professional networking, right? I've found as I've launched my business, there are a lot of groups that are more professionally minded that use Facebook as a tool to kind of keep people connected, because that's really what it's about. Now, I know the essence of Facebook wasn't started that way, but that's another way. And you'd be surprised. I don't know if anyone is on Instagram out there, but Instagram is another way where I've seen people have success in connecting with other people that they wouldn't necessarily have access to in the future. In other ways, I should say. So, why is networking important? Right? So, I know it's not always everyone's favorite thing, but again, as we talked about, it's a benefit to your career, right? So, I think oftentimes people think of networking as either sales or job seeking, right? So, the other piece is it's a good way to research and gather information, right? So if you're looking to either find out what other jobs are out there, if you're looking to find out, hey, what are my competitors doing? If you're looking to say, hey, I'm thinking about switching careers, I want to go talk to some people that do different things and just learn what they do, right? That's that information gathering piece. The other piece that's really powerful part of networking is really seeking mentorship, right? So I'm not saying that you go to a networking event and you say, hi, I'm Sara and I'm looking for a mentor. Probably not the best approach, but it's a way to seek other people that may be a little farther along in your career that could help you. The other pieces we've talked about already is that job seeking piece. And I think that's oftentimes the bucket, especially when people are reluctant to network, they just think like, oh, that's for job seekers or maybe salespeople. And I think the other thing is it develops great professional friendships, right? Because you're not in as much of a stuffy setting, right? Oftentimes you're in a more casual setting where you can develop some relationships. Now you can't do that on the first date or the first meeting, but it comes over time and being repetitive in being out there. So benefiting your career. I think ways that it can enhance your personal life, and I've experienced this myself, is community. So I'll give you an example. When I launched my business, I went from working in a large organization of, several thousand people and a team of people that I worked with every day to working for me and being a solopreneur. And so for me, that was a big difference. And what I went out and did networking for was about seeking community and finding a group of people that I could connect with and had similar interests and similar minds that could really help fill me up. And if you don't have an environment where you're feeling that, that's one thing you can do is networking is you hear the word tribe sometimes, right? Find a tribe of people or a group of people that can really help support you in your life. I think it's also about expanding your horizons, right? When you go out and network, you meet new people, you learn new things, you push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, and that's always a good thing, right? I don't recommend you don't have to go crazy about it, but a little bit out of your comfort zone can really expand you. And the other thing is it can be fun. I know people don't always say that, but if you go in with the right intention, you can have fun and really enjoy going to networking and kill two birds with one stone and having a connection from a work perspective as well as meeting some cool, fun people and having some good conversations. So how do you network? Like, how does this work? What does it look like? I always like to give some general guidelines about networking, right? So sometimes people get reluctant about going out there and building a network because they're like, I don't know how to do it. What do I do? Right? Anybody experience that? Anybody? Yes. So I think that that's sometimes the most intimidating thing. Like, what do I do? So my recommendations, just a few here, are set a goal for what you want out of it. And I always say that you want to make sure that you don't set your sights too high. And what I mean by that is when you're going to a networking event for the first time, and maybe one that comes, right, there's a lot of events that happen on a regular basis. Really, I think the first thing is just making sure you knowing what you want and not setting your expectations too high. Like, I'm going to find a new job today is probably too high of an expectation going to a networking event. Maybe finding some cool people that might lead to something is maybe a better expectation. I think the other thing about being prepared and going out there is knowing your story. And so you'll hear the word elevator or the phrase elevator pitch. I'm not a big fan of elevator pitch. For me, it's like, kind of, I don't know about you, but it kind of makes me a little wonky. I think really what that means is, and why people talk about an elevator pitch being so important, is really just knowing your story, right? So knowing who you are and what you do and what you want and being true and being real. To me, that's what's most important. And again, I've talked about this already. Making connections matters more than anything. And what I mean by that is really connecting with the other person. Be ready to listen as well as talk, right? It's not just about, hey, what do you do? Here's your business card. Let's move on. It's not about those sorts of things. It's really about really getting to know that other person. And the other thing about being prepared is, and I tripped up in this when I first started doing a lot of networking when I launched my business, was oftentimes the other people, if they're used to networking, they may ask, how can I help you? And you want to have an answer to that, right? You don't want to be like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, you want to have an answer. So what an answer could be to that, right? Well, hey, I'm looking to interact with some more people in the nursing industry, or I'm looking to interact with more people in IT, or I'm trying to find somebody who's worked at Kohl's, for example, or I'm looking to learn more about leadership. So if you have any suggestions or ideas. So it can be a variety of different things, how you answer that, but just give some thought to what do you do when someone asks you that question? Because it's a common thing, especially people that network a lot will come up and ask you at the end of a conversation, how can I help you? All right, so that's some few guidelines around being prepared. And again, it's a bit like dating, right? So you want to remember not to come on too strong. Anybody ever been there like, hey, I'm looking for a job? If someone came up to you and did that, would you feel like, oh, do I even know your name? Like, can we back the bus up a little bit and get to know one another a little better? So really keep in mind, it's really about fostering connection and getting to know that person. If you go to a networking event with 50 people, your goal is not to meet 50 people. It's maybe to have 2 or 3, maybe 4 meaningful conversations where you feel like you really got to know that person just a little bit and you feel like you could take it to that next step, right? So kind of like a first date. I mean, maybe you are the type that comes on too strong, but in networking, I don't recommend that. I would stick with easing into that kind of conversation. And remember, first impressions matter, just like dating, just like an interview. Think about what image you want to portray, because the reality is, whether we like it or not, people pay attention to that. And that's just something you need to be cognizant when you're going out to networking. So if you're in a job seeker mode, for example, or if you're looking to move forward in your career, I don't recommend going in jeans, a sweatshirt, and sneakers. Like, I just don't think that's really necessarily going to be your best bet. And now it does depend on the field that you're in, but I would say generally speaking, you want to dress it up a little bit. I'm not talking about a 3-piece suit, but just making sure you're putting your best foot forward and really kind of caring about your appearance, because that matters. And that also gives you confidence in yourself. When you look good, it's easier to go out there and meet new people, which can often be nerve-wracking for people. I think the other thing, networking, being generous is incredibly important. My golden rule of networking is simple: don't keep score. And Harvey Mackay, a famous business book writer, said that. And I love that quote, right? My golden rule of networking is simple: don't keep score, right? So think about what that means. Give without remembering, receive without forgetting. So you putting yourself out there and giving and sharing and saying, for example, hey, I know someone that could help you with that, right? So if you have someone come up to you that's saying, hey, I'm looking to grow my business, or I'm looking to find another person in HR, or I'm looking to find someone in IT, think about who you know that you can help them, right? Because giving, they'll remember you for that, right? If you've helped them in some way, they'll remember you for that. And that's really, really important. But then you have to let it go, right? You can't think of it like this linear reciprocal relationship. It's really more of I'm putting it out there and I'm going to hope that something comes back in a really good way. And it won't necessarily be from that person, right? So just think of that in this spirit of being generous and giving. And we're in the holiday season, so it's a good time to talk about that. But make sure you think about how can you be generous, because it will come back to you. And I've seen that happen personally in my business. There's a lot that's been written on the importance of giving. And to be honest, that if you're nervous about networking, sometimes that's easier, right? Sometimes it's easier to think, how can I help this person than how can they help me? Because I don't know about you, but I think oftentimes, and I'm guessing we have probably a fair amount of women on the call, we're all not always the best at asking for help. So sometimes if you just give, it makes it more comfortable for you too. I think that the things to think about, so some tactical stuff when it comes to a group event networking, right? So you're in a room full of 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, can feel really overwhelming. At least it can for me. I don't know if anybody else would say yes to that, right? I am about half introvert and half extrovert. Do I have any introverts out in the room? Like anybody out there who's an introvert? Give everyone a second to type. I'm guessing you are, because you're on a webinar, not live in person. So let's just go with the fact that there are. So some things to keep in mind if you are more introverted. One hack I like to call, as it comes to networking, especially in a large group event, is think about how you approach the room. So one thing you may or may not have noticed, you will find when you go to events of any sort, whether it be networking, a party, anything like that, you will find that there's the center of the room is like where all the noise comes from. right? That tends to be where the introverts go, right? You hear the volume, everyone's laughing, everyone's all excited. And if you are an introvert, that may really scare the crap out of you, to be honest. You're like, feel like really overwhelming. In fact, you may want to back out of the room the minute you feel that. So the trick is go to the edges of the room. Go to the corners of the room. You will typically find the introverts there. And I share that because that may make you feel a little more comfortable. And that might make it a little easier to ease into the room. You don't have to go straight to the center of the room. That can typically be overwhelming for a lot of people. So don't be afraid to just go to the edge of the room and talk to somebody who's standing at a table with two people, or even by themselves. Like, I'm sure they're sitting there thinking, like, you may be nervous, but they're also thinking, like, I'm standing here by myself, and I really wish someone would come talk to me because this is really nerve-wracking. So know that so many people in the room are feeling the same way you are if you're reluctant about networking. So don't be shy. Go to the edges of the room. You don't even have to ever go to the center of the room if you don't feel comfortable with it. It's not like all the good people are in the center of the room. It's just a tendency. Studies have shown that introverts go to the center or I said that wrong. Extroverts go to the center and introverts go to the edges. So don't feel like you're doing it wrong by working the edges of the room. There's nothing wrong with that. I think the other thing to think about at a group event, because they can feel kind of overwhelming, is taking a buddy, right? There's sometimes a lot of value in taking a friend with you that knows you well, because there's a couple of reasons for it, right? For one, it's kind of like your security blanket. Now, you have to be reasonable about this. We can talk about that. But consider taking a buddy, because they can give you that confidence that you may not feel. They can also, you can serve as introducing each other, right? So like, hey, here's my friend Jennifer. She's awesome, right? So then the other people that you're introducing Jennifer to are like, oh, she's awesome, right? It's kind of like that third party endorsement sort of piece. And then Jennifer can say, hey, this is Sara. She's amazing. And there's some real value in that. And it makes people feel comfortable, and it makes all of you feel comfortable. So don't be shy about taking a buddy. Now, if you take a buddy, you can't just go in the corner and talk to just your buddy. Now, that's not cool, because then you're not really accomplishing what you wanted to, because I've seen that happen. And to be honest, I've done that more than once. So don't do that. Make sure you interact with other people. It's okay if and it could be that you lose your wingman, right? You lose your buddy for a moment, right? And you go off and separate. But it's okay to really have that connection, and you can support one another in pushing yourselves out of your comfort zone. So, and my third point up here, maybe have a drink. Drinks aren't at all these events, but sometimes the evening events, they are. And I'm not talking about like 5 drinks. I'm talking like 1 drink. Keep it within reason, because we don't want it to get out of hand. Because again, it's about first impressions, but maybe have a drink, because that might chill you out a little and relax you, make you feel a little bit better about putting yourself out there. Okay, I'm saying, if you do take a buddy, how do you make them comfortable? So if you do take a buddy that is shy, how do you make them comfortable? I think working the edge of the, sorry, I had to read the question. I'm working on chat here, people. So I think, now I'm getting a beer mug. Okay, I love it. I like the humor. I appreciate that. So if you take a buddy that's shy, and maybe you're not as shy, maybe, I think it's about how do you make them feel comfortable. So I would recommend going to the edge of the room and being sensitive to the fact they're shy, and you taking the lead on making that introduction, right? And you saying, hey, this is so-and-so, and maybe putting out a question out there. I think one of the best things you can do when it comes to networking, just ask a question. And in this country, the typical one is, what do you do, right? When you're going to a networking event. You can also say, hey, what are you doing for the holidays this time of the year? That's a real easy one. Or tell me a little bit about yourself. There's all sorts of things that you can do to bridge that gap and make that conversation. So asking some questions can help get that conversation and maybe help a shy person, or asking a question to the shy person when you're with other people to get them a little more engaged, right? Or encouraging them to just ask a question, because sometimes that's the easiest thing to do if you think about it. If you ask the questions, you don't have to have any answers, right? You just listen. And sometimes that's a lot easier and actually really more effective, because the other person feels like, wow, this person's listening to me. You're so cool. I like you. I want to get to know you better. There's a lot of value in that, because who has been to an event or been in a situation where they don't get a chance to talk at all, right? I think we've all been there and done that. And how nice it is for someone to actually really feel like they want to get to know you a bit. There's a lot of value in you asking those questions and making that connection. So I think the other piece, right, if we move beyond the group networking, is to think about the social media, right? So if you go to a networking event, what I typically recommend, especially if it's a business networking event, right? Typically you exchange business cards. Hopefully you have some conversation. If you do, my rule of thumb is I always, okay, not always, because sometimes I lose a little track, but I try to. My intention is always to then connect with those people on LinkedIn right away. And I always recommend you personalize your message. And you can do that on LinkedIn. It depends on if you're on your phone or if you're on your laptop. But if you hit connect, usually if you're on your laptop, you will see send a personal message. I always recommend that and give people context, right? So say, hey, we just met at this mixer last night. It was great to meet you. I'd love to stay connected, right? So then you're encouraging that relationship, right? And you could even go a little bit further if you really want to go crazy. Say, hey, I loved what you had to say about this, right? Just something that isn't like, I'd like to make a connection, right? Whatever the language is that LinkedIn uses. I always recommend you personalize that message. Right? So if you're involved in Facebook groups as part of any of your networking or you've met through a Facebook group, make sure you comment and like often, right? Show your support of other people. And then you can always use Messenger to reach out to people, right? And on Instagram, for those of you that know about Instagram, you can like, just like you would on Facebook, but there's also direct messaging like you would find on Messenger and also like you'd find on LinkedIn where you can say, hey, I loved your content. I'd love to set up a time to talk. I have a friend who has made a lot of connections through Instagram by direct messaging people when they've liked each other's content and built some relationships and got some great opportunities to work together that way. So no, those are some other options. I think the other piece, oh, did that not switch? Okay, no. So again, you got to follow up. Kind of like I just talked about LinkedIn, like what do you do through that social media channel? It's making sure you send that personal message. It's also then thinking about how do you follow up with them consistently, right? Because you want to build on the conversation you had at that networking event and you want to maintain contact. And maybe you want to, one of those options is connecting them with someone who can help them, like we've talked about, that giving piece, or asking them a question like, hey, you are a graphic designer and I am really looking to get into graphic design. Would you mind talking with me for half an hour about that? Could we have coffee? And you would be surprised. Most people are more than willing to share their knowledge, right? And they look forward to doing that. Think about it this way. If you got asked that, would you want to share and would you want to help them? And most of the time, for most people, you're all good people, you'd say yes, right? So think about how you can help one another or connect them with someone that can help them. And then mark your calendar to follow up with them consistently, right? Because you can't put the onus on them. You need to take responsibility and accountability that if you want to build your network and build the team of people around you to help you move forward in your career, move forward in your life, you need to take the ownership of that, right? It doesn't mean they don't like you. It just means that we're all busy. So if it's your intention to build your network, you need to take action on that and figure out how do you consistently follow up with them. It could be as simple as sharing an article, right? You could do that through LinkedIn, or if you have their email address, like, hey, I thought of you when I read this article. I hope you're doing well. You know, simple things like that. It's just like networking is kind of like marketing. If you've ever heard the spiel about, it takes like 7 times, I think, to really get people to pay attention. So you want to think of networking that same way. You want those touch points to build off that relationship. And I think remember to make it fun. Like it doesn't have to be this heavy, painful thing. It's really about sharing some of you and having them share some of them back and making that connection and seeing what comes from it, right? And I think it's again about setting the intention that you want to make some connections, you want to build off of that, and then you're hoping that that's going to come back to you in some shape or form. Again, not necessarily from that person, but it can come back in lots of different ways. So questions, anything from the chat? I've gone through a lot of information in a short amount of time. What questions do people have about networking? Anything I've shared? Anything coming up for you? I'll give you a second as you type in chat. And I'll take a water break. I know I wasn't that thorough. I'm sure I missed something. Anything? I see one message. I see somebody typing. And it's okay if you don't have questions. I know it's like we're at the end of our time, so I understand. You may have to go. You might be hungry. You might need to eat. That's okay. Okay. I see you typing. I'm going to keep talking. So, oh, hold on. Nope. Okay. So what I'd love to do is stay connected. So thank you so much for coming out today and learning a little bit about networking and taking a leap. I would encourage you to do something about this, right? So if you've been reluctant to network, go connect with somebody on LinkedIn, right? Build up your connections there. Go to an event, right? There's so much stuff going on this time of year, especially with the holidays. And just reach out to one new person, right? Don't set yourself up to say, I got to meet 10, just one. But feel free if you're looking for a way to figure out, okay, who's in my network? How do I look at that? I have a free networking sheet I'd be happy to share with you. If you want to send me an email to Sara@moonstonecoachingandconsulting.com, don't hesitate to do that. I'd be happy to send it to you via email. I can share that with you. It just gives you a way to kind of think about your network in another way. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Moonstone Coach, and connect on Facebook. I'm under Moonstone Coaching and Consulting. And if you are looking for one-on-one coaching, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I always offer free consultations when I do speaking events. So if you're in the space where you're looking for that, don't hesitate to reach out to me via email. So again, I want to thank you all for coming out today and joining me and interacting and participating. It was a pleasure, and happy networking. Thanks so much.